Hello everyone. So lately I've been doing tiny little bits of organization, and today I sat down and did swatches of all the alcohol inks that I have. I did up a little swatch ring and filled out the chart that Ranger provides, and it helps with things like this especially so I can see what I don't have. So I will include links to everything in my blog post. They'll be linked directly below the video. So to start off with, I created a bunch of tags that I used this little tag die from a Simon Says stamp. It's their Merry and Bright die set that coordinates with their little Merry and Bright stamp set. I just wanted a smaller tag. You don't need this specific die, but I thought it was cute, and it was a decent little size, and it wasn't too big, but you could just trim down a bunch of YUPO paper and punch a hole in it if you wanted. I found I could fit 6 of these on one piece, so I just cut it down into strips and then ran these through my little SIDEKICK die cutting machine so I could die cut enough tags for all the alcohol inks that I have on hand. And then I also printed off these charts. These are available on the Ranger website. I'll just include a link to that in my blog post. I printed off 2 of them. One I'm keeping as is, and that's the one I'm gonna add the inks to and fill out as I get more inks and keep track that way. And then this one, I just printed it out because I thought that would be a lot easier than typing up a ton of labels with my label maker. That was my first thought, and then I was like, well, I could just type it up onto just regular paper, but I'm like, why bother typing it up when I can just print this off? They're such a small size, the names of everything, so that's what I did. I just printed it off, and then I'm just using my trimmer here to just trim off the strips where the actual names of these inks are. So I'm going to speed this up, and I'm just going to go along and trim these into just tiny, narrow little strips. If you want to be really OCD, you could use like a ruler and a pencil to make sure the lines are like, all the strips are perfectly the same width. I didn't care. I just eyeballed the whole thing. It was good enough for me. So I trimmed off all the excess. So all I'm left with is all of these little strips of the names of all of the alcohol inks. So once I had that, I needed to add adhesive to these. Thought about a few different things and then realized the easiest way to do this would be just to run it through one of my little Xyron sticker makers. So I just grabbed my little X sticker maker because it's convenient, and I arranged several of these strips of words, just making sure they were less than 1.5 inches in width, because that's how much this will fit. And then once I had several of them, to make my life a little bit easier, I just took pieces of Scotch tape and put tape on each end of all these strips just to hold everything in one place so that they're all kind of even. So they're not going all over the place or like going over top of one another. They'll all be even and get adhesive evenly across them. So then I run them through my little machine, and then I'm going to do the exact same thing with the remaining strips. And then I'm also using my little Teflon bone folder just to make sure that adhesive is pressed really well into these. And I also go around the edges so that the backing paper there can pick up any of that excess adhesive. So now I'm just going to repeat this step and do this with the remaining little strips of paper here. So now I've basically created my own custom little like label stickers with all of the names of the alcohol ink, and I think there's about 60 alcohol inks now. So this just saved me, I think, a ton of time than trying to print all these off, or like type them up and then print them off with my label maker. So I'm going to run these through, do the exact same thing, press them down really, really well with my Teflon bone folder. And then I can peel off the backing paper off of both of these to take off any excess adhesive. And then I've just got these strips of words with the backing on them is going to have adhesive. So after I've done all that, it's now time to actually get to creating my actual swatches. So I've made all those tags by die cutting them from that YUPO paper. You could use, I'm sure, like other types of cardstock. I chose the YUPO because I wanted, since YUPO is something I use the most. You could also do glossy cardstock. I might actually do a second set depending on how different it looks on glossy cardstock. I still haven't used alcohol inks on glossy cardstock. But for me, I wanted to use YUPO paper, at least for this first batch of swatches. And since I'm only doing swatches, I decided to cut down my alcohol ink foams here, felts here. I have the rectangular ones. Ranger is releasing circular ones for the mini tool, which is great. But I have a bunch of these rectangular ones, and I saw no need to waste a full foam for each swatch, or a full felt. So I cut them into quarters. So after cutting them into quarters, I just attach the little felt to my blending tool. Then I'm just adding some ink to it and then dabbing it onto my first tag as my swatch. And then I'm also dabbing it onto that full chart that I didn't cut down. Just dabbing it on. It doesn't need to be perfect. That's how I'm going to see what colors I have and then what colors I need to get. It's just a better, you know, all-in-one glance visual guide. And then to label them, I just took my PenBlade to cut the ends off each of the little strips here so I could peel that off and apply it to my tag. So after I started the process, it got like faster and faster and easier. So then I would add another new fresh little quarter of felt here, add the alcohol ink, dab it onto a new tag, and then dab it onto my chart. And then I'm going to take my PenBlade and trim off each end of the little label, peel it off, and stick it to the tag. So this also didn't take as long because I don't have all of the alcohol inks, shockingly, I know. I have a decent amount, but I want to get the rest of them. The more I play with them, the more fun I'm having. So I'm just going to keep going along and doing this. And I'm working on my little glass mat. I will have a link to this as well with everything else. I will also link to the new mat that Tim Holtz unveiled that they're coming out with Tonic. It's the big black glass crafter's mat by Tim Holtz. It's amazing. I'll have a link to that. It's pre-order right now because they're not releasing till mid-February. Late February, I think, is when they'll start shipping out. So I will link to it though because it is fabulous. But I'm just using my glass mat because it's easy to clean up any of the alcohol ink that gets on it. I can just wipe it away with either, you can use an alcohol wipe or rubbing alcohol or hand sanitizer, etc. So I just clean it up as I go along, like throughout this. And always, when working with alcohol inks, make sure you're using it in a well-ventilated area. Open a window, open the door, you know, have a fan going, etc. Like just make sure you've got some airflow going because these do have a bit of fumes, etc. You want to make sure everything's well ventilated, which is what I always do when working with these. So I'm just going along and just keep adding the ink to my little tag, adding the label, and then adding the ink to the chart before adding a fresh foam or fresh felt. I always want to call these foams. So fresh felt and then going on to the next color. So I'm just dabbing the color onto these tags. Nothing too fancy. After I started doing these, I started realizing I would go back, let it like sit for, you know, a minute, and I would go back sometimes and add a little bit more ink just to get that fun alcohol effect because it's kind of nice to see how it looks that way, and it just gives it that extra little texture. That's just an extra like little visual step. So once I was done with all the actual inks, I only have 2 of the mixatives so far. There's several. I have the gold and the silver mixative, but there's also, you know, pearl and copper, and they released the gunmetal and the rose gold, etc. So I've only got the 2, but with the mixatives, you want to shake them really, 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 really well, especially if they've been sitting for a while. You'll notice when you shake them, if they've been sitting for too long, you won't hear anything, but there's actually a little like ball bearing inside the bottle. So if you don't hear that, it definitely means all the pigments have settled. So shake the ever-living daylights out of it. And once you hear that ball bearing going around, shake it some more until you can see that all the pigments in the bottom have mixed up and haven't settled. So I give those a good shake, and then same thing, dab them onto my tags, dab them onto my chart, and then add the labels so that I've got all of my colors now swatched. And I ended up punching a bigger hole through these and then just putting them on a binder ring. So I've got my whole little set of tags on a binder ring that I can easily flip through when I go to create. I can see all the colors at a glance. And then I also got my chart, so I've got a visual glance all at once, as well as I can keep track of which colors I get, which colors I need, etc., etc. So like I said, I will have a link below the video to my blog post, and I'll have links to all of the supplies. I'll have a link to this Ranger chart, etc. So check that out below if you're interested. Thank you all so much for watching and subscribing and thumbs upping and commenting on my videos. I really appreciate it, and I will see you all very soon in the next one. Bye!